Everything about the poorest and fairest president of Uruguay, Jose Alberto, his life and everything about him. Part 6. We continue to tell a stage of the life of the president of Uruguay, Jose Alberto, his life and everything about him. We want to take users out of hiding and create a situation where we can say, "You are overdoing it. You have to deal with that. It is a question of limits," he said. Opposition parties see an experiment that will blow up in the broad front's face at election time. Most Uruguayans dislike the law, and it will be struck out if Vasquez, who is standing again as a candidate, does not win next month's vote. The real reason for the marijuana law can be found near Mujica's birthplace in Paso de la Arena, where the asphalt turns to dirt and the houses are small and poor. Gangs of youths stand around in the dusk. This is when the pasta base kids appear. Walter Pernas, an investigative journalist and construction worker's son, explained as we bumped down back roads. Pasta base, a toxic product of the cocaine purification process, with effects similar to crack cocaine, is spoiling Mujica's attempt to take people out of misery. It is arguably Uruguay's biggest social problem, exacerbating poverty and fueling crime. More than 1% of Montevideans are users. That number rises in these poor, fringe barrios, where the bocas, or drug markets, start trading after dark. Mujica wants to take marijuana profits away from traffickers, while freeing up police resources. In a country with such dramatic economic growth, popular concern is no longer about jobs, poverty or the economy, but about violence, insecurity and pasta base. It is a lost generation. They are so brain damaged that they can't even understand enough to keep a job, Pernas said. Fear of violence is real and growing. People who used to carry rubbish to the street bins at night now wait until morning. Once, poverty drove people to the bins to eat, and housewives carefully placed leftover food in separate bags. Now pasta base addicts take them. Juan Abate, the owner of the family bakery where Mujica worked as a boy, described how he had once been prevented from making a delivery by a gang of teenage pasta base hoodlums. "They pelted my car with stones, so I had to leave," he said. At the next elections in October, Uruguayans will vote on a referendum to reduce the age of adult criminal responsibility from 18 to 16. When Mujica returns here, he sees a society that is both wealthier and weaker. This is partly an old man's lament for innocent childhood days spent gathering wood, selling flowers, and chasing fish in the creek, but also part of his discourse against consumerism, egoism, and what he calls mental poverty. "Our life has been made much easier," he said. "But that is eliminating creativity." A bust of Che Guevara peers down from a bookshelf in Mujica's farmhouse. "He was unforgettable, a mold breaker," the president said. "He marked our entire youth." Yet the man who, inspired by Guevara, once blew up factories owned by foreigners now offers them tax breaks. "I need capitalism to work, because I have to levy taxes to attend to the serious problems we have. Trying to overcome it all too abruptly condemns the people you are fighting for to suffering, so that instead of more bread, you have less bread," he said. Not all Tupamaros have accompanied Mujica on his journey to soft, pragmatic socialism. They left their ideals in their prison cells, the former hostage Jorge Zabalza proclaimed recently. "Some old compañeros won't understand," Mujica said. "They don't see our battle against people's everyday problems, that life is not a utopia. I need capitalism to work, because I have to levy taxes to attend to the serious problems we have." As in other countries in the region, an economic boom largely fueled by China's growing need for food has lifted vast numbers out of poverty, down from 40 to 12% in a decade. Acute poverty has declined tenfold over the same period. The boom has coincided with the presidencies of Mujica and Vasquez, when the economy has grown by 75% and public spending increased by almost 50%. Uruguay's wealth gap has also closed, not least because Vasquez's government introduced the country's first income tax. Social spending has surged, targeting the poorest. All Uruguayan schoolchildren have free laptops, though parts of the school system remain dysfunctional. But there has been no radical change to the basic social or political structure of Uruguay, partly because a complex institutional system discourages it. A land tax proposed by Mujica, for example, was struck out by the courts. Uruguay's democracy has so many checks and balances, the political scientist Garce said, that presidents must govern through dialogue, inoculating the country against the populism that has wreaked havoc elsewhere on the continent. The newly pragmatic Mujica no longer fights the globalization which, by linking Chinese dinner tables to Uruguayan farms, funds this remarkable transformation. It is like when I look in the mirror and see my wrinkles, he told me. I don't feel sympathetic towards them, but they are inevitable. I have to fight to administer it as best I can, because if I start wailing like a baby, I am not going to change it. Globalization's glaring failure, Mujica said, is a lack of political oversight. It is bad because it is only governed by the market. It has no politics or government. National governments are only worried about their next elections, but there are a series of global problems that no one deals with. That does not mean capitalism has won outright. I don't think it inevitable that the world should live in capitalism, he told me. That is the same as not believing in man, and man is an animal with many defects but also with startling capabilities. Mujica still believes in class warfare. And yes, he said, this is definitely war. But that war, stripped of revolution and rained on by reality, is now fought on a very narrow battlefield. Salaries and union rights excite him most. Garce told me that Mujica has been hamstrung by his faction's minority status within the Broad Front coalition. The extraordinary thing is that we have a group of revolutionary socialists who didn't believe in democracy, then turned themselves into expert vote seekers but eventually do only minimal reforms to the system, he said. Yet, the minimum wage has jumped 50% during Mujica's term, suggesting that radical reform may not have been needed to take big steps down the road towards his impossible utopia. Indeed, when I asked Uruguayans how much Mujica had changed their country, some replied that it was Uruguay and its traditions of moderation and dialogue that had changed him. His transformation, the economist Ernesto Talvi told me, is basically a triumph for liberal democracy. The former Tupamaros I met often mentioned Don Quixote. Mujica told me that Che Guevara embodied the spirit of Cervantes' mad, honor-obsessed knight-errant. One young writer even suggested that the president had been deliberately marketed as a modern-day Quixote. The refusal to compromise personal honor, exemplified by his simple chakra lifestyle, certainly fits that narrative. With their utopian dreams and their past love of just but ultimately feudal violence, the Tupamaros know all about tilting at windmills. But Mujica's determination to keep experimenting has seen him square idealism with pragmatism. And where austerity is inside the president's home, rather than outside it, accusations of selling out can only ring hollow. After our talk, the president donned muddy boots and showed me the farm buildings. The powder blue VW Beetle sat in a dusty garage with rusting, sheet metal doors. It rarely breaks down, they virtually give away spare parts, and the insurance is cheap, he said. His post-presidency dream is to set up an agricultural school for young people in an empty barn beside the chakra. Since I devoted myself to fixing the world when I was young, I didn't have children, he explained. As we left, I asked a chard picker about the president. He's an ordinary man, he said. It sounded like an accolade. This article was amended on the 18th of September 2014. An earlier version misspelled Ernesto Talvi's surname as Calvi. I stop at this point today. Until next time, stay curious. Stay informed, and keep exploring the world's incredible stories. Thank you for watching.